Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're totally tearing down the wall between science fiction and reality. I mean, we've all seen lions, tigers, and bears, right? But what actually happens when nature, or, human intervention, mixes the DNA of completely different species? Well, you get hybrid animals. And no, we're not talking about mythical monsters from some ancient folklore or creatures drawn up in a comic book. We are looking at real, living, breathing organisms that exist today, right alongside us. So here's the roadmap for our explainer today. We're structuring these incredible animals by how and why they came to exist. We'll start with captive big cat oddities, then we'll look at upgrading beasts of burden, explore some wild accidents and anomalies, and finally, we'll take a peek into the mad scientist's lab. All right, let's kick things off with our first chapter, Captive Big Cat Oddities. First up is a hybrid that might honestly remind you of Napoleon Dynamite's sketchbook. Yup, the liger. Created by crossing a male lion with a female tiger, these absolute beasts are artificially created and exist strictly in captivity. But here's where the biology gets really, truly tragic. Ligers suffer from a condition called gigantism. Basically, they grow to be much, much larger than either of their parents, maxing out at an unbelievable 1,200 pounds. And while that sounds incredibly majestic in theory, it's actually a massive detriment. Their internal organs, especially their hearts, just completely struggle to support that colossal frame. So sadly, it usually means they live a really short, heavily strained existence. Now, what's really interesting here is how simply flipping the parents completely changes the offspring. If you take a male tiger and mate it with a female lion, you don't get a liger, you get a tigon. And the tigon looks dramatically different from its gender-swapped counterpart. They have these stunning light tan stripes, a gorgeous white underbelly, and a distinctly spotted head. But, much like a lot of captive hybrids, they're almost always completely sterile, which means every single one is the first and the absolute last of its unique family line. Moving on, we have two incredibly rare and strikingly beautiful big cat hybrids, the Jaglion and the Lepin. The Jaglion is a cross between a black jaguar and a lioness. And get this, one of the most famous pairs was actually born by total happy accident at a sanctuary in Canada, and those twins grew up completely inseparable. But if you think that's wild, consider the Lepin. This is the offspring of a male leopard and a lioness. It has the head, the deadly jaws, and the mane of a lion, but the sleek, spotted body of a leopard. It's an absolute powerhouse of an animal. As we know, beautiful animals in nature are often the most deadly, and because they're just so astonishingly rare, the Lepin is immediately placed on the endangered species list the very minute it's born. Okay, let's pivot our narrative for Chapter 2, Upgrading Beasts of Burden. We're moving from Zeus spectacles to practical human meddling. Humans have been crossbreeding farm animals for centuries, basically trying to build a better agricultural animal out of pure necessity. Let's run through a few. First, the Kama. This is a camel and llama mix bred via artificial insemination back in 1998. The goal? The extra soft wool of a llama, but the cooperative temperament and size of a camel, and totally humbless. Then there's the Zoe, a yak and domestic cow hybrid. Farmers in Tibet and Mongolia value these highly for their immense size and delicacy meat. Next up, the Zonki, a zebra and donkey mix, giving you classic equine hardiness paired with those iconic zebra-striped legs. And finally, the Geep, a sheep and goat mix. It's got a coarse outer coat and a really beautiful woolly inner coat. A fun quirk about the Geep: like many hybrids, they're completely infertile, but apparently they are very romantic. The first recorded Geep in Botswana was famous for relentlessly chasing after literally every single female sheep in the facility. It really all comes down to understanding how genetics play out when you swap the parents in working animals. You probably all know the mule, right? That's the pairing of a male donkey and a female horse. But if you invert that pair, a female donkey and a male horse, you get the hinny. So why the huge physical difference between the two? It's all about the dominant traits of the mother. Because the hinny's mother is a donkey, which is obviously much smaller than a horse, the hinny is significantly smaller in stature than your typical mule. But hey, don't let the size fool you. They pack incredibly strong legs and, honestly, a way better looking mane. Let's move along and see how this human optimization builds over time by looking at the beefalo. This is a mix of a male cow and a female bison. The timeline here is actually super fascinating. The very first recorded beefalo was just an accidental breeding in the American South way back in 1749, but humans caught on fast. By the 1800s, settlers were purposely breeding them because they gave more milk and survived much harsher winters than standard cattle. Fast forward to the modern day, and meat industry scientists have stepped in. They're engineering the beef flow to reliably produce leaner meat with significantly less fat and cholesterol. So it's really a centuries-long journey from a colonial accident right up to a highly optimized, super lean meat machine. All right, on to Chapter 3, Wild Accidents and Anomalies. This is what happens when nature takes the wheel, completely free of human cages or fences. The Growler bear is a prime example of nature adapting to our changing world, and it's honestly pretty tragic. This is a grizzly polar bear mix. Back in 2006, an odd-looking bear was shot in the Canadian Arctic, and rigorous DNA testing confirmed it was indeed a hybrid. So how does something like this happen organically out in the wild? Well, normally, these two bears have entirely separate territories. But as climate change literally melts the Arctic ice, polar bears are running out of space. They're moving further south, directly into grizzly country. So the shrinking ice has quite literally forced these two apex predators to share territory, resulting in the growler bear. 66. That is the exact number of razor-sharp, pearly white teeth you will find in the mouth of a wolfen. This is a wildly cool, super rare hybrid made by crossing a female bottlenose dolphin with a male false killer whale. While there are a few swimming out in the wild, the most famous example is Kekemalu, who was born at Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985. She was a massive hit right from day one, sporting this wonderfully dark skin and those 66 distinct shark teeth. And get this, she was actually able to successfully produce offspring of her own. And that brilliantly illustrates our next wild anomaly, which is truly just mind-bending: the green sea slug. This little creature literally hacks biology. First, it snacks on marine algae. But second, instead of just digesting it and moving on like a normal animal, it incorporates the plant's actual genetic material right into its own DNA. Third, because it now has that plant DNA, the slug actively uses photosynthesis to create its own nutrients, turning a bright emerald green in the process. It is a literal plant-animal hybrid. Talk about you are what you eat, right? As of right now, this is the only known successful instance of gene transfer from one type of complex organism into another. It's an absolute marvel of science. So, we've seen nature's wild accidents. But I have to ask you, what happens when humans engineer hybrids, not for zoos and not just for small-scale farms, but for massive, high-tech global industry? Well, as you're about to see, the results border on straight-up science fiction. Welcome to our final section, the Mad Scientist's Lab, pure, high-level genetic splicing. You know, as Uncle Ben famously said in Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And researchers at the University of Utah have certainly tested that power because they went ahead and created actual, real-life spider goats. Yes, you heard me right, spider goats. But no, they aren't out there swinging from skyscrapers and fighting crime. Instead, scientists took the DNA of the golden orb spider and literally spliced it directly into the genetic code of ordinary goats. Why on earth would they do that? Because these modified goats now produce milk that contains pure spider silk. This silk milk can be extracted, refined, and used to manufacture incredibly strong materials. We're talking heavy-duty industrial-scale stuff, high-strength parachutes, virtually unbreakable fishing lines, and even high-grade body armor. It is a stunning leap forward in biotechnology. They are quite literally using a living, breathing animal as a factory to manufacture advanced industrial goods. But, as we know, scientific tinkering absolutely does not always go according to plan, which brings us to the scariest hybrid on our list, the killer bee. Back in the 1950s, scientists in a Brazilian lab decided to mix standard honeybees with African bees. Now, the goal was noble enough. They just wanted to increase global honey production, and they planned to keep it all within a completely controlled lab environment. But the reality? Total disaster. These highly aggressive, fiercely territorial hybrids managed to escape. They broke loose into the wild. And unlike a lot of the sterile hybrids we've talked about today, killer bees rapidly reproduced and swarmed across entire continents. They are entirely a product of human interference. And frankly, a terrifying reminder that when you play with nature, sometimes nature fights back. Which leaves us with a pretty critical question to wrap up this explainer. Are we actually mastering nature's code, or are we just setting the stage for some massive unintended consequences? From the tragic gigantism of zoo oddities like the liger, to the mind-blowing biological hacking of the green sea slug, all the way to the sobering reality of the killer bee escapes, hybrid animals show us both the awesome power and the extreme fragility of genetics. Nature is a really, really delicate balance, and as we continue to unlock the secrets of DNA, we have to decide just how carefully we want to tread. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into hybrid animals. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I will catch you on the next explainer.